The forward stroke. Deceptively hard and a challenge for every kayaker, whether they're a beginner or an expert. Let's break it down. So why is the forward stroke such a big deal anyway? If it gets you forward, isn't that enough? The reality is, efficiency is your friend. You want to have endurance as a kayaker because you're going to be paddling a lot. Also, the more momentum you have, the more control you have. Another reason is injury prevention. Having good technique keeps you from getting hurt. Let's get started. You don't want to be leaning back trying to kayak. We've all seen that person leaning back in their boat trying to go somewhere. The reality is, you don't go anywhere very well. You want to make sure that you're sitting up nice and tall, straighten your spine, strong spine, an imaginary line going through your head and out your crown. Think about pulling yourself up and paddling strong. Hinge forward slightly at the hips rather than just hunching forward. Now, it should go without saying, but you're actually on a floating kayak. And a lot of us don't sit evenly. I'm not sitting evenly right now. We almost never do. So believe it or not, you have a dominant butt cheek. You're always sitting on one side or another, and you may favor one side. When you're in a kayak, you want to straighten up, sit evenly, and make sure that you're strong and that you're keeping your boat nice and level. You might not have noticed yet, but when you get in a kayak for the first time, you will. These whitewater kayaks, any whitewater kayak, doesn't go in a straight line easily. Some go a little more easily than others, but the truth is when you're learning, they're all just gonna spin in a circle. You'll take 2 strokes, maybe 3 if you're lucky, and then it'll just go to the side every single time. This is a rite of passage. It's gonna happen. Thing is, it's a feature built into the kayak called spin momentum. It's a good thing. Because of spin momentum, when you build up pressure under the hull of your kayak, you can release that pressure into a turn, which is what we do in whitewater kayaking. We turn a lot. But in the meantime, when you're wanting to paddle forward and you're paddling flat water or slower rivers, it's gonna be really hard. So you have to manage your spin momentum and you have to manage that pressure underneath your kayak. And it's gonna take you some time to get a feel for it. One way to get a feel for it into management is to make sure you're taking really good strokes. If you're sitting evenly in the kayak, you're maintaining a good heading, you're rotating your torso properly, and pushing with your feet, chances are you'll be able to get more than 2 or 3 strokes in before the spin momentum kicks in. It's going to take you anticipating the spin and correcting it in order to get over it, in order to get past that part of the learning curve. The forward stroke is not arms only. If you're using just your arms, not only are you going to get really fatigued, your stroke will be extremely inefficient. It just isn't going to be effective. The stroke, the forward stroke especially, but any stroke for that matter, is a full body motion. Let's back up a moment and start with our torso rotation. The easiest way to learn torso rotation is by sitting in a chair. If you're sitting in a chair and you can imagine turning your body without turning your legs, leaving your legs forward, that's step 1. Step 2 is picking something to look at. I'm going to look at you, and don't turn your head. You should be able to rotate your body without turning your head. Once you feel like you've got that down and you may need somebody to hold your head for you, it's time to add your feet. Every time my body turns to the right, I'm going to push on my right foot. Every time I turn to the left, I'm going to push on my left foot and alternate. You don't have to lift your feet, but feel what it feels like to push your feet. You're going to feel your whole body working. You'll feel it in your back, you'll feel it in your obliques and core. The next step, you can grab your paddle, and remember, I'm at mostly just a little less than 90 degrees on all of my angles. The front face is facing forward, the power face is facing behind me and my control hand. It's nice and lined up and ready to go, but I have a loose grip. All I'm gonna do is rotate my body without moving my legs and without moving my head. Plant the paddle at your feet, and as you unwind your body and pull the stroke, pull it with your whole body, pushing with your foot on the same side, rotating your torso. Pull the paddle out at your hips. You should be lined up where your opposite hand and opposite elbow are in alignment with the center of the kayak. The top arm should be positioned about shoulder high to forehead high. If it's low, that means your paddle is going to be too horizontal to take a good stroke, and a vertical stroke is your friend. So a lot of people talk about punching with the top hand while pulling with the bottom hand. But think of it like this. Your top hand really needs to be a fulcrum for the lever. How are you going to have more power? If you use your top hand as a fulcrum rotating your body, or if you just try to pull the paddle with one hand. You're going to have a lot more power using your entire body to rotate your core, and you don't need to tighten your grip. If you tighten your grip, you're going to be limited on how much rotation you can use. You're going to know you've got it right when your paddle blade enters the water quietly without a lot of splash and exit just as smoothly. You want a clean entry and a clean exit, and you want a good glide through the water. You also want to minimize the amount that your kayak rocks from side to side. If you can stick a water bottle on the front of your boat and it doesn't fall off while you're paddling, you know you've got it dialed. If you're pulling the stroke out at your hips the way that you should, you're not going to have a lot of back and forth rocking, and the boat will glide through the water on waterline. The idea is to get your kayak planing so that you can smoothly and effortlessly move through the water using your big muscles rather than your small ones.
One good way to practice your forward stroke is to paddle long, flat sections with strong current upstream.
Let's troubleshoot. So, if you're looking at something and you don't want to go there and you keep finding yourself going there, it's probably because you're looking. Make sure you look where you want to go. If your strokes are splashy, try pausing. Take a stroke and wait. Take another stroke and wait. If you feel like you need to take more than one stroke on each side, do it. There's no rule that says you can't take 2 right strokes or 2 left strokes. The secret is thoughtful strokes. If you're wobbling a lot while you're paddling, you're probably taking strokes too wide and they're mimicking a sweep stroke. It's a turning stroke, so it's going to turn you. Taking a paddle stroke that's too long actually levers your boat back and forth and will cause your boat to rock front to back. You'll lose momentum. If you don't feel like you're getting a lot of power, but you're rotating your torso properly, one thing that a lot of beginners do, and some experts, is not getting the paddle all the way in the water. You have to plant it in the water and pull a full stroke. If you're finding that you've ended a stroke and then you have to move, you're not rotating your torso enough. If your forearms or your arms in general get fatigued, it means you're using too much arm. If you're bending your elbows a lot, you're also using too much arm. You should be able to straighten your arms completely and still complete a stroke using only your torso. This is going to take you a while to learn, and it'll take you years to master, and even then you may not. I still work on my forward stroke for sure. The best way to practice it is to break it down into reasonable small steps, increments, or components. Try to focus on one thing at a time before you try to put all the pieces together. If you try to put all the pieces together at once, you're gonna get overwhelmed. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe, and feel free to ask me questions in the comments. I do read them and I'm happy to answer. If you have any suggestions on a video you'd like to see, leave that too. Now let's go practice those forward strokes. I'll see you on the river.